My name is Juan Francisco, and I'm a psychic medium and tarot card reader. I've always been curious about the supernatural, the paranormal, and psychic abilities, and I'm here to share my stories and interview folks who want to share their own stories with us. Let's get to it. A change of plans for this spooky season episode, which is no longer a spooky season episode. I was actually going to have this episode be about horror movies. Are horror movies bad for... Wait, why is it so hard to say the word horror? Are horror movies bad for your soul? Period. End of story. This episode was going to be about that. But I recently had a learning moment as a psychic medium that I think is very important to share with all of you. And especially given what's going on in the world right now. So I'm going to have this be a very quick episode, but I really want to get to the meat of what I'm trying to say in this episode. And I'm sure that the title makes a few people feel like gives you pause, maybe gives you pause. It's like, oh, what is this going to be about? And some of you witnessed this learning moment I had on Instagram a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to just set the scene. And there's a listener question submitted by, let me actually go to right now, by Jacob in Houston. I believe in Houston. Jacob submitted a question to me in my Third Eyesight broadcast channel on Instagram, which is something you can join. I sometimes ask folks for their opinions on social media stuff, on my podcast. I ask people to submit questions, share ideas for the podcast. You can do that in my Third Eyesight broadcast channel. I'm sorry, Third Eye broadcast channel, to be precise. Gotta brand myself well. Correct branding. But back to being serious, I'm going to address that listener question because it relates very closely to what I'm going to talk about in this podcast episode. So 2 or 3 weeks ago, I published a podcast episode in which I'm live from a cemetery. Now that episode I filmed and recorded in September, way in advance of October. And in that episode, as I'm sitting in the cemetery, I say, and I should probably say this first. And I say this in the intro to the episode, but just a content warning, trigger warning. I'm going to be talking about death as it relates to world events. So please know that if this makes you feel uncomfortable, you can pause and not listen to this episode. Totally respect that, but wanted to give you that content warning. So I say as I'm sitting in this cemetery that death is an equalizer. And I proceed in saying that we all come from the same place and we all go to the same place. Regardless of how powerful we are, whether we're politicians, we're rich or poor, we all go to the same place. And what I meant to say by that was that should help us look beyond our differences and respect each other. So I used that part of my episode as the promotional clip for that episode on the release date of the episode, and I posted it on social media. And after I posted it, maybe 24 hours later, someone very close to me told me that what I posted was insensitive, and they had very strong feelings about what I posted and thought it was very wrong. And I felt a little defensive. Because I'm a medium, I talk about death all the time. I know things are going on in the world. There's a war going on in the Middle East. I know these things are happening, but I do this all the time. I talk about death all the time, and death is always. And I said, death is always happening. There's always tragedy going on, and I was very defensive, and I responded to them at a time, I'll admit, when I don't think it was the best time for me to respond. I was in the middle of something else, and took me a week. Well, it took both of us a week to come back together and talk about this and talk about how each of us felt. And there are different things we talked about in terms of our conversation about this topic. But what it really boiled down to was, yes, that person knows what I do and they acknowledge that there was space to understand that I'm a psychic medium who works with the topic of death and dying. And at the same time, I felt, next time I want to post a statement about death, I should consider what's going on in the world. I should consider what people are grieving about. And I should know when to not say anything. In regards to that social media post, which is still up, I added a disclaimer to it. I added a note to it to clarify what I meant by the statement and the reason I put it up. That social media post, it is saying something declarative about death at a time when people are grieving all around the world, and especially in the Middle East, as well as people who are in other parts of the world but have family and friends in the Middle East. I myself have coworkers in my 9-to-5 job who have relatives who are sort of in the middle of what's going on in the Middle East right now, in Israel and Palestine. And it really got me thinking, because I don't think in my almost 3 years working as a psychic medium, I don't think I've ever come across doing what I do while navigating a world event or something in the national news, national or international, that is a major tragedy like this. COVID may be the closest thing. And even then, back then I never made any broad statements about death, because I felt like I hadn't delved as much into this work to say things like that. I hadn't had enough readings of people with people on the other side to make declarative statements about death, if that makes any sense. And now I feel like I have a better idea as to what the state of death means for the soul, or what it entails, that process. I don't know everything. I don't know what heaven looks like. I don't know exactly what it feels like. I don't desire to until my time comes. But I think it's just, I think this has really taught me, like, hey, just consider what's going on in the news, what people are going through. And if you're going to post something, this is me talking to myself, Juan, if you're going to post something, add a note to clarify what you mean and to really extend some kind of support, and not just put something out there about the topic of death. So I was really able to meet with this friend of mine who brought this concern up to me. I was able to see where they were coming from. And in the meantime, between the time that this friend brought up this concern to me and the day that we talked about it a week later, I had been talking to other psychic mediums and friends of mine, and because I felt like, did I do something wrong? I felt bad. And I got a lot of input saying, no, you didn't do anything wrong, and this is what you do. Like, there's nothing wrong with what you posted. That was largely the feedback I got. Maybe one or two people, including my boyfriend, said, my boyfriend actually said, well, I can see how it may be bad timing, but it's also what you do. And another person had very similar feedback. So most people that I checked in with about this were supportive of me putting up that post, and there shouldn't be any need for me to apologize for putting it up. However, by the time or right after I had spoken to my friend about it, we talked about it the week after they brought it up to me, I made my own determination and thought, people are telling me I shouldn't apologize. People are telling me one person said it was right for me to post it. Like, maybe that's what people need to hear. But I decided, you know what? I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't think that I should have avoided posting it, but I also think I should have been way more careful in how I posted it and what I wrote in the caption or what I had on the video. In the video, I should have been more careful. And it's an interesting practice for me, and because I think growing up, my human self always sought validation from people. Am I doing this right? Do you like what I'm doing? Do you like me? And this time, I got a lot of that support for me and what I did with that post to begin with. When I first posted it, they were saying how it was okay for me to post that. And I could easily be the kind of person that thinks, well, all these people think I did the right thing, or all these people think I did nothing wrong, so I did nothing wrong. I'm absolved. There's nothing I need to apologize for. And I respect and honor everything that folks said to me in support of my post. However, I've made the determination that, you know what, the next time I post something like this, and there's something going on in people's lives across the world, I need to really consider how my post may impact somebody or make them feel. Will it come across as tone deaf? Will it be inconsiderate? Will it come across as ignorant? Because this is the thing. God forbid another tragedy like September 11th happens in New York City where I live. Would I go straight to posting about death 2 days after that? No. And I have to acknowledge that I have this privilege of being physically removed from what's happening in the Middle East and socially removed by what's happening there. I don't live there, so I don't have to be physically impacted by what's going on in the Middle East right now. And I don't have friends or family who are being impacted by what's going on in the Middle East. So I have these two privileges. But if something were happening directly to me, I would, of course, I'd be thinking, there's no time for me to post about death. Look at what's happening in my city, in New York City. Look what happened. So I need to be considerate and think of how people are feeling in those situations. And some people, a lot of psychic mediums, a lot of new age kind of minded people have this mentality of, well, how people feel about what I do is not my problem. And to an extent, yes, that's an accurate thought. It's a sort of healthy way of living life. You shouldn't care what people think. However, when we hurt people's feelings or we do something that could harm them in any way or re-traumatize them, we have to take responsibility for that. Otherwise, we're just a bunch of narcissistic psychic mediums going, oh, I'm going to do whatever I want, and however way you feel about it, it's not my problem, because anything I do should not affect you. Very narcissistic, and that's definitely what I don't want to be. And this is why I titled this episode, When Mediums Need to Stop Talking. I was going to title it, When a Psychic Medium Needs to Shut Up, but that was going to be a little too harsh. I was talking to somebody about this post and this thing that I was having with this friend of mine, this disagreement, what was then a disagreement. And this person who knows what I do said, well, let's say you go to a funeral home and you set up shop as a medium. You set up a tent outside the funeral home and you tell people, hey, I do readings. I talk to the dead. How appropriate would that be? And I said, oh, not appropriate at all. And he said, why? He was challenging me. I said, well, it's not respecting those who are grieving. And that's the thing. I want to repeat what this person put forward as a scenario. I, as psychic medium, I'm not going to go to a funeral home and stand outside and say, hey, I do readings. I can talk to the person who just passed. I can channel them for you. How inappropriate would that be? How messed up would that be? Now, me putting up a social media post is not the same thing. I am promoting my podcast. I am not setting up shop in a way that people cannot avoid me. People can choose to unfollow me. People they can scroll past my post. But it's still about being delicate regarding the topic of death, given the circumstances and the context of what's going on. Just like how it's inappropriate for me to stand outside a funeral home and say, hey, I'm a medium, come get a reading with me. Oh, you just lost your grandma, come get a reading with me. Just like how that's inappropriate, it could be just as inappropriate for me to put up a post about death and heaven when people are grieving on a mass scale across the world what's going on in the Middle East or any other kind of global tragedy. During COVID, during 2020, April, March, May, June 2020, when things were really bad, that would have been a not good time to post about death. And if back then I were posting about death, there would be a very clear disclaimer about it because it was such a horrific time for the globe and so many people were dying at very fast rates. Not a good time to talk about, hey, book a reading with me. Hey, death is okay. They're in a better place. Not okay. And do I believe those things, that death is a spiritual release, that it is freedom for the soul, that it is a happy place? Absolutely. But time and place. Sometimes it's not the right time to say that. And I learned that a couple weeks ago with this post and in the feedback that I received. And I'm going to go ahead and read this listener question from Jacob from the Third Eye Broadcast channel. He just said, any messages or insights from spirits regarding current world events? And I told Jacob, as well as the rest of the group, that I would address this on the episode. And this is what I sent to them. I said, thanks, Jacob. I will address this question on the next episode. I'll say up front that given the grief folks are feeling, I feel that now is not the right time to tap into things psychically or mediumistically about world events in a public setting. I'll share more about this in my episode. And I stand by that. It's different if I were to tell a couple or several medium friends of mine who are mediums and psychics, like, hey, can we do a call together and channel what's coming through about the world events that are going on right now? And then it's a private setting, it's a private group setting. But for me to use my public platform to give prediction, I don't do predictions, but let's say I did, to do predictions but this is the thing, I know psychics who do predictions about world events. But see, they're known for that. They're known for doing predictions. But even then, I imagine they have to do things on a case-by-case basis, be very careful about what are they predicting about, how are they sharing about their prediction, when are they sharing, maybe they have their prediction, but are they going to share their prediction the day they get it, or are they going to wait a little while just to respect the time that people need to grieve? There are probably so many factors that play into that. But as for me, I don't have any desire to tap into the spiritual world and ask about what's going on for the sake of the public knowing. Now, some may feel that that's me doing a disservice to the public because here I have this ability to do what I do and I'm not using it for good, for insight. But I really do believe Spirit understands that people need the time and the space. Some people just don't want to hear this crap, to be totally honest, because they have bigger things to worry about, like they lost a loved one, or they have loved ones who are in harm's way during this war. That's more important. Respecting people's space and the time they need is way more important than saying, but wait, I have a prediction. But wait, Spirit is telling me. Spirit understands that people need time and space. Sometimes we don't. Humans don't. But I believe Spirit understands. And so, it'd be, like I said, if it were up to me and I wanted to share insight from Spirit, which I won't do, but if I wanted to, what I would do is tell people, hey, I am hosting a closed, or I'm a ticketed, not even ticketed, free or whatever, free or at, for a price, whatever it may be. I'm hosting a group and we're going to see what we get, what information, insight we get about the war in the Middle East. Those who would like to join may join. That's different than me going on a public platform and saying, hey, everybody, I just got this download about the Middle East. It just hits differently. Because then with a closed group or a more private group, something that's set apart from the public eye, those who are interested can decide to do that. Those who are not, they don't have to. As opposed to me posting something and it goes to everybody's feed, or depending on the algorithm, goes to however many people are going to see it. That's way different. There's something that my favorite podcaster says sometimes. She goes, does that make sense? Because she feels like she rambles. And I feel like I'm rambling or I'm going in circles. So I am wondering, is what I'm saying making sense? It just goes back to respecting time and space. People are on social media and they're scrolling past a lot of things. I don't want to be another thing that's going to re-traumatize somebody or disrespect the grief that the world is going through right now, and especially those directly impacted by what's going on. It's different if I say, hey, I'm hosting this thing. You're welcome to join. Otherwise, I am just on people's feed like, hey, I'm here and I have insight about the Middle East. Not cool. Not cool. Time and space. People need time and space. Just because a medium has the ability doesn't mean it's always the right time for the medium to share insights. It's like when you're out in public as a medium and you get a download or an insight, which doesn't happen often to me, but I know people who experience that. You can't just go up to people in a store and say, hey, I have your grandma here. It's just, number one, the person may not be open to it. And number two, they're not in the right headspace. And that's no fault of their own. They're shopping. They don't need to be in the right headspace. So who am I to impose that onto them? I guess maybe depending on where you live, maybe it's a psychic community. I don't know. Maybe it is appropriate to go up and say, hey, I'm a psychic medium. May I share a message with you? If not, that's okay. I can see that is a little more okay because you're giving the person space to decide. Giving them space to decide. But just going up to them and saying, hey, I have your grandma. And she says, it's not okay. And on things like Long Island Medium, TV shows like that, I admire Teresa Caputo. And in those circumstances, I know that camera people, the cast and crew the crew is going up to people saying, hey, she wants to give you a reading. Can she come give you a reading? So they do ask the people, I'm very sure, and have them sign a waiver or whatever. They have to get permission to put them on TV. There's a lot to that process. But I'm saying, let's say there are no cameras, no crew. It's just me in a store. And I go, hey, I have a message for you. It's not okay. Because it disrespects the boundary and disrespects someone's free agency of deciding whether they want to be open to that at the moment. I'm open to getting a reading at the moment. So I'm saying a whole lot of things, and that's pretty much the gist of what I wanted to say. But I think what I want you to step away from this episode knowing is that just because a psychic medium has the ability and runs a business doesn't mean that it is right for them to say something about some things right now. If anything, the best thing a psychic medium can do is provide comfort and prayer. If a psychic medium wants to talk about the Middle East and what's going on right now, that's up to them. But you have to be so careful about it and so delicate because there's a lot of pain there. As for me, in my scenario, I didn't address the war, but I talked about death in general. I made a statement about death, and I could have been more careful in how I posted it, and I should have put a disclaimer or a note, because otherwise it just seems like, pardon the language, but like I'm talking out of my ass, and I'm speaking the truth. I should say this. I'm speaking my truth in that podcast episode and in that promotional clip I posted. But just because I'm speaking my truth doesn't mean I don't have responsibility for how my words might impact somebody else. That's being empathetic. And empathy is such an important part of being a medium, being a human. So I wanted this episode to go up today because I think it's way more important than talking about spooky season or horror movies, and because there are a lot of people hurting right now, and there are a lot of things people are saying and doing that are hurting people right now. And all that I can say about what's going on is that I hope that you, the listener, if you're directly impacted by what's going on right now, whether it's, you are located somewhere in harm's way, or you have family and friends located in harm's way, I just send you a lot of love, and there's nothing I can say to help you feel better or to make things better. There's nothing I can do or say. And the best that I can do is send you love, a lot of love, and I hope that you feel it and receive it. And for those who are affected tangentially, they're just scrolling on social media and they feel overwhelmed by the news and they feel grief. They feel traumatized by watching what's going on. I send you a lot of love too. And with anybody, there's just nothing I can say to make it better. But I just want folks to know that there is love in the world and there is support for you. And I hope, even though I don't know you personally, I may not know you personally, but I hope that hearing that someone else is sending love to you brings even 1% of comfort. So I wish you a beautiful rest of your day. Thank you for listening, and be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself today. Thank you. If you have a question or topic you want me to cover on Third Eyesight, head to my website, juanfranciscospirit.com/contact, and send a message my way. If you really enjoyed this episode, leave a review wherever you listen. I'd really appreciate it.